Hey folks, it's Janek Gwizdala. It's the Janek Gwizdala podcast. We're going to get into a pedal that I have had for so many years and a sound that I've been chasing also for many, many years and never realized I could find it in this pedal that's been staring me in the face quite often from my pedalboard, and I just never used it in the right way. It is amazing what you can get out of a pedal when you read the manual. We're going to get into all of that, how I'm using it, what it's doing in my pedal board. We've got the top-down camera here so you can see all the pedals. It's a bit cannibalized right now because I've yet again shuffled it all around. To that end, because I've been looking for reverbs and stereo setups and modulation and sort of lo-fi manipulation stuff, two pedals have left the board recently, and if you've been following along all the board builds on the channel, you will know that that is the UA Effects Golden Reverberator and the Hungry Robot. What is that one called? That's the Wardenclyffe Deluxe. I was looking for some modulation, and this is a mono pedal, not stereo, so it didn't really fit the bill. Neither of these pedals have been toured. I did put the Golden Reverberator on the board and take it to a gig and literally never switched it on because I always got to the Delverb and I was like, oh, that's what I want. And I want this slot to be filled by something else. We'll get onto what that is in a little while. All that to say, both of these pedals are available on my website. I'm selling them, getting rid of them. Got to get stuff out in order to get stuff in. So there's a Wardenclyffe Deluxe Hungry Robot. There is a mint condition with box and papers. Both of these with box and papers. If you're a watch fan, you'll know what that means. But they come in the original boxes with all the accoutrement. The Hungry Robot is brand new, never been used. Like I said, the Golden Reverberator was on the board briefly, but actually never got turned on a gig, which is crazy. And I think it only went out to one gig. Anyway, they're both here. Linked below in the description of the video if you are in the market for an unbelievably ridiculously good sounding stereo reverb. I just didn't need two of them on the board at the same time. That's why I'm getting rid of my one. It sounds insane. And this is super creative as well. The Hungry Robot, the Wardenclyffe Deluxe, is super creative in the modulation department. But I ultimately decided to go full stereo with my rig. I found a solution with the Walrus audio, the stereo canvas, so I can have a stereo DI on my board. I found a stereo solution, so I'm kind of getting rid of as many mono pedals that are now just sort of redundant for me, and get rid of as many of them as I can to get new stereo stuff in. So link below, both of these are available. Be quick, they're going to disappear, I know that. Let's move those over here. What else do we have before we get into the pedals? Yeah, so something that happens as a small business owner, whatever, you guys know me. I write books, I sell them, and I do quite a limited number compared to all the other ways that people buy the book. It's a very limited number of signed physical copies. So I order these books, I get them printed, and they get delivered to me. However, I've had, as you've heard in the past, the Porch Pirate stole some. That wasn't great. I've actually had a little bit of bad luck recently in terms of the way Amazon have been packaging them and shipping them to me. They have arrived in less than optimal condition, and some worse than others. But even on this one, where the corner is a little bit gnarled, should we call that gnarled or bent? Just that tiny tip of the corner is a little bit bent. There's no way I can let that go out of the door in terms of quality control when somebody buys this. Somebody's paying full price. I want them to get a pristine example of the book. But recently, Basis Book of Scales and Arpeggios came through, and I think there were 30 in the box, and they just had not packed it the right way. And I want to say it was like half of them got kind of, in some way or another, a little bit damaged. So I've mentioned I was going to try and do this before because it had happened a little bit, not as bad as this in the past, but I've actually done it now. That you can buy these sort of seconds, sort of not quite perfect versions of the book for a serious discount. I think this book is normally $39.99, and we're going to take like 25% off. I think it's going to be $29.99 for the signed physical copies. Some of them are as minor as a little, crumple in the corner. Some of them got bashed around and are maybe there's a little mark or a stain on the back or something. Some of them, it's a little bit of damage, like a little fold. The cover got a little folded or something like that. So there are varying degrees of damage to them. Of course, Nothing is affected inside the book. The information is still there. I'll still sign them and send them out to you. But instead of going through the ball ache of having to pack them all up and mail them back and return them, I was like, okay, I can offer them for people at a discount. I know there was interest in that before. So let's see how much interest there was. Linked below. There are a limited number of these sort of seconds, mildly damaged copies of the book available for a rather large discount. All signed. Like I said, all the information inside is still very much intact. And that's that. Let's move on. I got to mention tour dates very quickly because the tour starts with Steve Smith and Vital Information next week here in Los Angeles. I'm not going to run down the entire list. Just go to janekgwizdala.com/tour. But we do start with 3 nights at the Baked Potato here in Los Angeles, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th of April. And we go up and down. Yeah, it is up and down actually, kind of crisscrossing around the West Coast. Vegas, New Mexico, San Francisco, Oakland, Portland, something in Utah. Yeah, there are a ton of dates there, and moving forwards through the year. Just go to janekgwizdala.com/tour. Now let's get to this pedal. What it is starting to replace, because if you followed along before, you'll know all about my love-hate relationship with the Otto Bit Jr. And I'll tell you where all this stemmed from as well. We had a gig Thursday last week with Bob Reynolds at the Baked Potato, our regular monthly slot. Ruslan couldn't make it, so Julian Pollock was playing keyboards. You may know him as J3PO, plays with Chris Bodie, with Marcus Miller, with everyone. Really great keyboard player, and one of the few guys I know who really has his effects together, has a pedal board, has a bunch of keyboards, but also has a pedal board with stuff on it. And he rocked up and he had the Otto Bit Jr. And I was like, dang, okay, I've got to grill him about this. There's no blend knob, so how is he using it? His take on it was that he actually liked that about it, because it made him play in a certain way, which I totally get. There is a really cool element about that. And this is the big if, and this is what clinched it for him to keep it on the board, was that it's sort of a once a gig sound. It's something you don't use all the time, so you're not tied into this one thing all the time. And when you do use it, he was treating it as it is what it is. And yes, it doesn't have the dry blend, the blend knob. So it just is what it is. I was like, okay, that's an interesting take on it. Then I looked down at his pedal board, and right next to it is my arch nemesis, the Red Panda Tensor pedal, which I very publicly had a pretty serious meltdown about on Twitch. When I was streaming, I think it was LaFave told me, man, this is an awesome pedal, you should grab it. I did, and then I just could not make head nor tail of it. And this speaks volumes towards read the manual. And I heard Julian using it on the gear. I was like, man, that's really musical. And it's TRS stereo, so hence the reason the Wardenclyffe and the UAFX pedals that I just showed you are off the board, because that is going to be my sort of stereo delay. I'm not actually going to use the Delverb for delay very much at all. That's going to be my reverb, which has been fantastic, as I will show you in just a second. And swapping the Otto Bit Jr. off the board, I've had the Mood. I've had it for years, 4 years, 5 years or something. I know I bought it from my buddy Hondo, and I've had like, core like success with it. It is a very musical pedal, but I always had it like pigeonholed as doing one very specific thing. And that thing, much like Julian was saying for his Otto bit, that thing wasn't necessarily an all gig type of pedal. It was like a once a gig or once every other gig even. So, okay, damn it. But I just started listening. Just listen to all the people that I really dig that make this sound that I'm about to play you. And I was like, hang on, this. And then I happened to run across a YouTube video about the Mood. I was like, hang on a second, it is doing that thing that I want. And so when I'll give you an idea of what we're doing here with just the reverb, the big old, the beautiful UAFX Delverb. Definitely got to check in with my levels here, because this is all pretty new. This gain structure and this setup is all pretty new to me. I've only been working on it for a few days. So I got to make sure everything, give me a couple more dB on each side. And I'm also loving major chords in their first inversion, a minor third apart right now. So to me, already this is a beautiful sound. It's something I've wanted forever, to have stereo reverb. But in terms of some modulation, some texture in there, I'm now using the wet side, the old blood noise. What is it? Old blood noise endeavors. There are two sides basically to the Mood. I'm using the wet side to give me the bleeps and the bloops. It's really silly. It's like bleeps and bloops. Haven't quite got the mix yet, but hey, there is a mix knob on it, so I can actually dial that stuff in. And there's just something about it when you play chords, when you play melodically, when you play soft, perhaps just simple harmony. It feels really dynamic under the fingers. And then listen to that reverb disappear and tail off. I think that's beautiful. I think, the most important thing to me is how it feels under the fingers. And what it has done is really given me some different dimensions with which to play with. And I'm still getting used to the controls and the sound of this instrument. So I've been experimenting with rolling in some tone. And you hear how that affects it immediately. This is with zero tone. And this is with just a hair of tone. So really just super fascinating, the options that I'm getting based on the input I'm giving it, based on the tone that I'm giving it. And I'm using it, it's basically a reverse delay. I've thought about this, like, hey, I've got the HX1, I've got the HX Stomp, there are various pedals I have with reverse delays in them. But there's that wild card, that X factor to it that I cannot explain with words, but the feeling of it under the fingers and the results I've been able to get. I've been writing a lot. I've been recording a bunch of demos for new music. It has been just really special. And we'll get to let's get to some changes. I wonder if the mic will go down that far. Hang on. When when we experiment with the clock knob. And how it's kind of easing and squeezing into the harmony as I move. And that's basically all on the wet side, and I'm using slip mode. And I've had the manual up here, the PDF on my desktop just for days now, just so I can keep going back to it and keep reiterating, or just keep remembering, get repetition about what each thing on this pedal does. I'm not so into the reverb side of the pedal just because I have an amazing one after it, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to use it, because when we get to using it for what I always have before, which is let's see here. Just kind of creating weird loops. And that's using stretch mode on the micro looper side. Which I believe is Drolo. So it's like Drolo on the right hand side and Old Blood Noise Endeavors on the left. Those are the two components to it. So that's something I might throw in a looper, for instance, just to create kind of an ambient loop. I really need to find out why my looper is clicking every time I start a loop. That's really annoying. So now I have that in there. Now, I know that bleeping and blooping and big ambient loops is not every bass player's cup of tea or goal or dream, but in terms of just making music, it's given me a really nice sort of creative boost in the past days, since I rediscovered the Mood and if I'm being honest, actually discovered it for the first time, especially the wet side of it. Now, I think it throws into question so many other choices I've made with pedals, and unfortunately runs me into like a lot of doubt, like, oh, was I using that pedal for the right reasons? Holy crap, I've got 300 pedals or more in this room. How fast can I get through them and really investigate them after all these years? Some things like the boost I'm using on here, the Vertex Effects boost, there's been a really nice addition. I should give that a quick shout out just because it's been really great to have. Once things get crazy, if you've ever tried looping, especially if you've ever tried layering lots of ambient sounds that have low end, mids, and you're basically covering the entire range. Bass amps don't normally facilitate that very well. They're not designed to be a keyboard amp, for instance. They don't have that massive range. And we essentially, if we do this, we layer all these different sounds, especially in ambient loops like this. If we do this, we essentially become sort of keyboard players. At least we occupy that kind of range. So it's been nice to be able to give myself a little bit of a boost once I have a bunch of chaos. If I haven't been careful ahead of time in layering it and not getting too loud and blown out, it's nice to have a boost to come over the top of that if I need to, and not just shredding and just blowing or whatever, but to add different textures at different volumes. Been really nice. And it's notched as well, which I kind of like, so I can get really specific with the placement of the boost in terms of how many dB it is. I forget off the top of my head how many dB it offers, but it's a massive range. There are still some stalwarts on here. There is rather the Mantic, the Hulk. Ooh. Hello. Actually, does that bleep and bloop as well? A little bit. Really designed for that, but yeah, there are still a couple of things on there that have always been there: the Franta-Bit, the Hulk, the HX Stomp. But you'll also see here on the pedal board that the Eventide H9 has made a comeback. I don't know how permanent that is, and I don't know how quickly I can get what I want into it and make it accessible. I still think that the UI is not great at all. And basically I want this sound. I want that in all 12 keys. So if I maybe put that in the looper to not my cleanest work, but you get the idea. Start to be able to produce quite a big sound there. Another thing I'm really interested in, and let's see how well the camera picks this up, are all the dip switches on the back of the Mood. So I've just engaged the wet side of the pedal to be momentary, which is another really expressive way of doing it. So So you're not tied to it, you're not stuck with it, especially if the way I've been using it hasn't been synced to any kind of grid. Yes, it is. The slip mode is a kind of, I'm using it as a reverse delay type of sound, but it's not, I'm not using it on the grid. I'm not using it as there's nothing like that. It's really completely loose across the bar line. The delays, the bleeps and the bloops are not intended to be in time. So that's really nice using the momentary switch with that. So I'm not tied to that out of timeness all the time. Now, here's the thing. What I foresee, because what is arriving on tomorrow or the next day, is a Red Panda tensor. And I think that's going to go between the Eventide H9 and the Delverb. So I get stereo delay out of anything I put into it from the Eventide H9 comes out stereo. I really would love my harmonizer patches in the H9 to be stereo. All of these, where are we? I'd love all of those to be in stereo. Right now they're in mono because I am going into the mood from the HX Stomp. But the plan, potentially, as I'm like kind of drawing over the mood right now, is to actually get this mood, the old one, the original one, off the board and get the purple one, the new Mark II, which is stereo. So everything could be stereo from the HX into, probably have the HX Stomp and the H9 next to each other, then go into a stereo mood, then into the stereo tensor, then into the Delverb. So such a large amount of the pedals on the board would then be full stereo. There would only be a couple of distortions, bit crusher things here, and 2 octave things, the Mantic and the MXR vintage bass octave in the front that would be mono, and of course the boost. So yeah, really excited for the possibilities on that. And also just the ability to build all these soundscapes that I've been hearing for so long but have never been able to execute quite the way I wanted. The dip switches are kind of tricky. I have one long fingernail on my picking hand that I keep for false harmonics when I'm doing stuff like this. So I'm lucky I have that. It's really easy to get into the dip switches, but otherwise, best have a mini screwdriver or something to flick them on and off. But amazing, you can do ramping. You can really interesting and very musical bouncing things with the ramping and panning effects. And of course there's the expression pedal option. All of this gets magnified and increased 5x, it feels like, with the stereo mood, because not only is it stereo and do you have all these other features, but on the micro looping side, if I were to do something in this one, for instance, let's turn off the octave. If I were to do something in here, for instance, okay, now I've got my little micro loop, but I can't change that toggle switch to envelope mode, for instance, from stretch without losing the loop. If I do that, it just switches to envelope mode and I've got to start again. And we're into a totally different thing. Don't get me wrong, it's a totally different fun thing, but that actually, what just happened there brings up another benefit of the Mark II, which is an upgrade. In the clock button, you can hear that hum, that buzzing now, that breaking up, that like degraded sound. You can go way counterclockwise with the clock knob on the Mark II and not get that breakup. See, I'm like at 11 o'clock on that knob before it goes clean again. So in those lower, lower bit rates? I gotta read the right, lower sample rates, exactly. And the Mark II, the stereo Mark II, is like those lower sample rates are way more usable because they don't start to degrade. like that. And I don't have either side of the pedal engaged. That's the through. And that's how it sounds where you go on a low sample rate. But you can get some interesting stuff. All right, so I'm getting a little carried away there, but it's so easy to get into some weird musical, glitchy, micro looping stuff. But now imagine that where you can actually switch between, what is it, stretch and envelope, and what's the third? Oh, and tape. So you got stretch, tape, and envelope are the three options on the micro looper side, and you could keep the same information in the looper, but switch how it's being affected with that toggle switch without losing the original information. Something else I've been experimenting with a little bit. The slide out again. Not sure how I'm going to integrate that into the playing, but sometimes for making little pads and string sounding things and sustain notes can actually be really nice. So that's where I'm at. The rediscovery of the Chase Bliss Mood. Not, I should have said this up front, not a sponsored thing of any kind. Like I said, I bought this one from a friend of mine. I bought the Autobit Junior from Meris. They didn't hand that off to me. I bought my Delver. I bought the Tensor. Like, these are not sponsored videos to get the word out there for people. These are also pretty old pedals as well, right? Aside from the new Mark II Mood, these things have been out for a while. I'm not saying anything revolutionary here in terms of product announcements, but really fun in terms of the music that can be made with them. And I'm on one side, of course, sad that this thing was not only in my possession, but quite often on my pedalboard, and I simply didn't know how to use it for the longest time. But also really happy that I've discovered it. Maybe now was the right time. I definitely want to experiment more with the attack on the bass and muting with my fretting hand, with my picking hand. I'm also trying to figure out a way to store 3 different reverbs in the Delverb and toggle between them. Working on that. Let's see. Trying to hack the system there, but yeah, in terms of the tone control. It's a delicate balance. You know, which pickups to use and how that affects the bleeps and the bloops. Oh, that's way too much. Maybe somewhere here. it's pretty aggressive. I need to back off the blend. And how when you play arpeggios like that, some really fun things you can get out of it. So am I suggesting you go out and buy a Mood? Hey, if you like what you're hearing, these are some options that I have found that you can get from it. I will say that it was quite, I don't know if it's really a revelation, but it was quite important to understand how so many of these pedals, you might like go out and buy one pedal and you'd be like, oh, this is the Mood is the thing that's going to make it all happen, and it does the bleeps and the bloops. But yeah, it does the bleeps and the bloops, but at the same time, if you're in slip mode, for instance, you don't get the reverb or the delay. You have your choice of three things on the wet side of the channel. So it's really, really key to be, for me anyway, with the Mood, to get the bleeps and the bloops, to be blending that with a reverb or with something else, maybe some other kind of modulation. I'm curious to maybe put the HX1 back on the board and use the retro reel, or maybe have that baked into an HX stomp patch. But yeah, really the best results seem to come when I'm blending it with other stuff, when it's used in conjunction with something else, and with this stereo setup, in order to spread that really wide image, the reverb has been the way to go. Like I said, I'm using the UA Effects Delverb on the big hall, and there's a preset in the app. I can't remember which one. Is it something about forest? I don't actually remember. There are a bunch of them that sound really good, like 8 voice things and ambient things and some really nice presets. So that's what I'm using. And like I said, it's all running stereo all the way out through the looper, through the DI, the Walrus Audio canvas. Actually, looking at this board, this might be one of the boards I've like purchased the most amount of pedals on. It's like the least amount of freebies on one board in a really long time. And let's see if you guys and girls of the bass world have some questions. Why don't you go down in the comments? They can be pedal questions. They can be actually anything. There are no questions that are off limits, really. There have been some pretty dumb ones lately, actually. Holy crap. Okay, here you go. I will answer all your questions. If you leave me we always do a little emoji here. If you leave me I'm going to just pick a random one out. If you leave me an emoji of, why am I here on, what is that? I'm here on sports. Woman playing handball. I don't know. It's literally just what the cursor went onto. So if you leave me woman playing handball emoji, that will be flashing up on the screen right here. If you leave that in your comment, for sure I'll read it. And if you have a question, I'll answer it. And how about you weigh in? I was going to do this. It seems kind of gimmicky and like a trend jacking kind of thing, because so many people do it. But it happens so much recently, like bad reviews, bad comments, like reading a bunch of them off of my channel. What do you reckon? Getting into that. It's how, even as I say it out loud, it sounds like such a minefield and a lose-lose situation for me. But yeah, it's just been the volume has been turned up on that side of things, more so than it normally is. You guys are just normally amazing in the comments, are very respectful, and you got criticisms, you put them in a great way, and it's really nice to hear the feedback, positive or negative. Normally it's put in a very constructive way if it's negative, and a very kind way if it's positive. So I always appreciate that. Just recently, emails and comments and reviews been kind of turning up the noise on the negative side of things, so, which was a little bit of a surprise. Oh shit! Right, I remember how the internet works. This is not my first time online, so maybe that would be funny. Maybe it would just be stupid. Let me know in the comments below. Leave woman playing handball. That was the emoji, and I'll see you all very soon.